Hey everyone, how are things going? This is not usual for me because this is a Wednesday, not a Wednesday, and normally on Wednesdays you hear from me. But I decided to do something different here, just something else, kind of mix it up on the blog. I'm actually going to do a review and also an explanation of how to play a board game and some of the strategies that might go along to this game. For those of you who actually watch my Wednesday video blogs regularly, I mentioned that I had purchased a game at Value Village for $2.99 and then I was going to get a chance to play it and then maybe talk about it. And I decided not to do that on the Wednesday. Instead, I was going to do this. So the game that I am reviewing and kind of talking about today is Lost Cities. Is it right here? Done by wrong side, Rio Grande Games, and they're known for a lot of great games. Essentially what happens in this game is you are a financier, an explorer, and you finance certain expeditions to lost cities. The gameplay goes by having a whole bunch of these cards all in a stack. You hand them out to the two players that play. It's a two-player game. There's a four-player variant, but it essentially is just another game. You're playing side by side in teams, so it's essentially just still a two-player game. You get 8 cards. Your turn is pretty simple. To start your turn, you can either play a card or you can discard a card. Cards are discarded on a board like this. Each one of these pieces of paper represent one of the expeditions. There's Himalayas, there's Egypt, there's I believe it's like the Andes or sorry, Mexico, the Aztecs. So yeah, you play a card or you discard a card, then you pick up a card from the draw pile. Each one of those cities is also where you place down your cards to start your expeditions. They're placed down on the top or the bottom of the game board, depending on which player you are. There are two sets of cards, or two types of cards at least. There are these cards right here that have the little handshake on them. And there's some guys there that are handshaking. These cards right here represent investments into your expedition, and they will actually multiply the points that you get on your expeditions. There are these cards right here. Each of them have a numerical value up to 10, so 2 to 10, and they add points to your expedition. It's kind of like you've explored the area and you found new things. In fact, you can even see 10 here. You know, they've uncovered like a sphinx, this Egyptian one, where 2 they've just uncovered a little, fallen kind of artifact. The gameplay goes that you place this first if you have them. You can place multiples of these, which will increase the multiplication of the points won. However, once a card is placed atop of it, like so, you can no longer place any of them and you will no longer gain the multiples. You can never place a card lower than the highest card previously put. So for example, I have a 2 right now. If I was to place a 5 next, okay, hopefully you can see that there. It's kind of hokey. I cannot place a 3 anymore because that, of course, is lower than a 5. The game goes until the discard to the draw pile is completely empty. Cards left in your hand don't count against you because you always have 8 because you will always have got rid of a card and drawn another card. When the round is over, you score the points. Points are fairly simple. Essentially what happens is you add up all of the cards that you have, numbered cards on each expedition. So for example right here, I'm just going to quickly throw together a pretend expedition here. Just give me 1 second. So this expedition here is the one to Egypt. I have a 2, a 5, an 8, and a 10. So my point scoring here is pretty easy. Technically speaking, that 3 should be before the 5. That, remember, always before, can't go after because it's a higher. So 5 plus 3 and 2 is 10, plus 10 is 20, plus the 8 is 28 points. Now, once you score that up, you have to deduct 20 points from every one of your expeditions. So in this case, my total score with this expedition right here would be 8 points. However, if I had one of these, I will now be multiplying that score by 2. So you multiply, in this case, my 8 points times 2, you get your 16. Yes, it took me a second there. There you go. However, if you score, say, negative points, so let's say that your expedition was only this, 2, a 3, and a 5. You would get minus points. So again, that was only 10. You deduct 20, you would have minus 10. With the investment, that would be times 2. So your minus 10 would now become minus 20. That's how it works. The game recommends 3 rounds. You kind of go through. Rounds are quite quick. I think I took us when I played with one of my fellow bloggies here about 10 to 15 minutes to actually do a round, if that. So yeah, that's essentially the game right there. That's essentially the scoring points. The only other thing that there is if you have a expedition of 8 cards, so that's essentially almost every single card in that particular expedition, you get a bonus 20 points, and that's not deducted by the minuses or anything. Couple of kind of strategic things that I would maybe think or let you know about. Don't start a ton of expeditions. Expeditions started will count against you. It's better to keep those cards in your hand. I found 2 to 3 expeditions of the 5 is probably your best to maximize your points. Another tip, don't start an expedition if you know your opponent's already started one. You'll both be fighting for those cards. There are only a limited amount of cards, and you don't really want to have negative points against you. So keep your expeditions low. Don't start one if your opponent has started one already, if you can help it, obviously. And also, if you can, if you know you have a lot of cards and you know you can really score on, say, an expedition to the Himalayas, maybe wait a turn and see if you can pick up another investment card. Because, of course, your investment goes from 2 times to 3 times, and theoretically I believe there's 3 cards, so up to 4 times the points. So if you can hold that, you can be quite strategic about that, and that's how your points really add up in this game. The third kind of tip I would give you is if you know you need to grab a couple more cards to make an expedition pay off, you can actually draw from the discard pile, which I forgot to mention before, thus allowing the draw pile to stay longer and keep the game going a little bit longer, and allows you to get a little bit more points. So that's the basic gameplay. It's fairly simple. It's placing these cards, trying to maximize them right there, trying to get over 20 so that you don't get into the negatives, and just kind of seeing what your opponent's doing too, and what cities you might want to invest in. So that's essentially the gameplay. If you ever have any questions about this gameplay, leave a comment right here. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video or do a video yourself and be like, I don't get it. So fill me in on that. So that's Lost Cities. Just kind of a bit of a, I guess you'd call it a review or my assessment of the game. The actual value of the game I found was okay. I mean, I got it for $2.99, which was a really good deal, but it goes for like $30 in Canadian funds. And I found that the value was kind of poor for $30. I think that there's a lot of the games out there that are in the similar price point range that have a way, way, way better bang for your buck there. So I would give the value like maybe a 4 out of 10 on this game. Replayability is not too bad. It's not a dice game, so you don't have the luck of dice. You do have the luck a bit of how your cards draw, but because the game board doesn't really affect the play, you can easily play without it. There's lots of changes, and each time is different. And sometimes you have a brilliant hand and you score a lot of points, and sometimes you have absolutely nothing. So for just kind of being able to replay it over and over and over again, I would give that probably a 6 out of 10. It's not too bad for that. The actual complexity and strategic initiatives of the game I find to be very, very minimal. I mean, the 3 things I gave you right there are probably the 3 things you're going to find are your maximum, strategic kind of things. It's quite simplistic, not overly strategic. I would say it's really a great kind of game if maybe you've just been out for like a few hours, I don't know, shopping or playing sports or whatever you do, and you want something just kind of lazy to sit down and just kind of play. I would say this is the game for you. It's not overly strategic and complex. I would give it probably a 4 out of 10 for that. The actual look of the game I kind of like. I kind of like the box with the expedition there in the back. They have kind of a look of, explorers. Actually, one of the things I really like about the look is all the cards. Like this is just the Egypt one right here with the Sphinx and all that. But if you look at some of the other ones here, I can pull out, this is the one to the Aztecs. You can see there's like an Aztecian kind of tomb there. You can see the jaguar. So the cards are really cool and really good looking. So I would say that both the look of the game and just basically it's a very simple box. Everything stays in quite nicely. I would say the actual look and the actual, I guess, functionality of the packaging of it is quite good, and I would probably give that a 7 out of 10. Overall, for Lost Cities by Rio Grande Games, I would only probably give it a 5 out of 10. It's quite basic, quite simple, has some replay value, but really not too much more than that. Well, this has been my review of Lost Cities. I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you think about it. Yeah, for sure. So say we all.